Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today we shall be discussing the pandemic of Jew hatred that is engulfing the British Jewish community. We'll also be discussing Israel on that road of recovery after 2 years of brutal conflict and how so many Israelis are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And we'll also be discussing President Trump's announcement that he is seeking to outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood. And in this program today, I'm joined by my very good friend, Zalmi Unsdorfer, chairman of Likud UK. Zalmi, it's always a pleasure to have you on the Middle East Report and always enjoy what you have to say. And you are a remarkable spokesman for Israel and your community. So thank you so much.
Thanks for saying that. Appreciate it.
And it's great to have you in a suit as well.
Thank you.
Zalmi, so can you just share with us what it's like for you, your family in North London in this, what I can only describe as a pandemic of Jew hatred that is engulfing this country. And you are a precious part of our society and our nation. And it's just absolutely tragic to see that Jewish people no longer feel safe in our country. Just share with us what you and your family are going through right now.
Oh, there's so many emotions in this. First of all, I think when you talk about a pandemic, anti-Semitism is a virus. It lies dormant and then it recurs. A couple of weeks ago, I went to the funeral of Manfred Goldberg.
We interviewed him, very special.
You did. He is the oldest or best known Holocaust survivor who told his story repeatedly and was feted by Prince Charles and members of the government and institutions all over Europe, in fact all over the world. He died at a very ripe old age. And his son, during the eulogy, said that he was terribly sad to see how this could all come back in the space of one lifetime. And speaking as someone whose father survived Auschwitz and Buchenwald concentration camps, at the age of 19 he was. He died at the age of 41 because of a disease that he contracted in the camps. But I feel him tapping me on the shoulder or whispering in my ear saying, "Why are you still in London? You should go to Israel." I have this feeling all the time. I tell this to members of my family, but that's what's being whispered in my ear. And you know, this virus, it's not a surprise that the virus comes back because anti-Semitism has been with us for millennia. But now it is like Goebbels on steroids with the assistance of social media, powered by nefarious actors, I guess we'll speak about later in the program.
And Zalmi, from your perspective, is the liberal, progressive members of the Jewish community starting to wake up to the reality of this Labour government who have made Israel their number one enemy, but also how this Labour government is also empowering the Islamists within our nation, and as a direct result of this is fueling the flames of Jew hatred?
If you're talking about institutions like, or long-standing institutions like the Board of Deputies of British Jews, they're no better than what was called the Judenrat during the war years, who were always appeasing the Nazi authorities. Appease, you know, we're good Germans and all this kind of thing. It doesn't work. At the end of the day, anti-Semitism has to be confronted, and in London, or certainly in the UK, from what I can see in my own community, it is being confronted by people voting with their feet. I've never seen such a big exodus of Jews from our community. There are dozens and dozens of Jewish homes up for sale. People realize they can smell the anti-Semitism in the air. They are not prepared to bring up their children and their grandchildren in that kind of environment, a toxic environment where the government's not standing by.
And Zalmi, you mentioned earlier in the program that you are the son of a famous Holocaust survivor. And having read his book that you gave me, The Yellow Star, has made a huge impact on my life to know your father's story. But what would your father say today about the dangers of Jew hatred when it's infecting our society and infecting our nation like it is? What are the lessons that we need to learn from history?
The lessons that we need to learn is that this can only happen when ordinary, good Joe Public is turning the other cheek and looking the other way. You know, what happened in Germany could never have happened if ordinary people had not looked away. They did look away. And that's the result. And I fear that the same thing is happening now, because what we have a situation now is that if ordinary, good, and the vast majority of British people are really, really good people. They just want to live their lives. You know, they're not interested in fanaticism and so forth. But they can't speak out now because of all this Twitter and cancel culture. They are literally scared of speaking out because people have been put in jail in Britain for tweeting the truth. So I think really, as long as that goes on, it's hopeless. Certainly it's hopeless here for Jews, but it's also hopeless for the British society.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at this excellent CBN news report. And this particular news report is entitled Unvetted Immigration Affecting the Rise of Anti-Semitism in the UK. And this is an issue that the British government needs to get a grip of, and fast.
Since October 7th, anti-Semitic acts have skyrocketed in the United Kingdom. Great Britain is no longer a safe haven for the Jewish people, and most British Jews have considered leaving the country. Dale Hurd brings us the story from London.
This is the United Kingdom that British Jews experience today.
Zionists, they are filthy animals.
Like obedient sheep, you obey Israel.
The whole condemning Hamas, I'm not going to condemn them, and Israel doesn't exist.
Most British Jews now no longer believe they have a future here. Recent polling has also found that most Jews hide their Jewishness in public and do not feel welcome in the United Kingdom. Gideon Falter is chief executive of Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, which commissioned the poll and has been documenting the rising Jew hatred.
A lot of people have talked about whether they have a future in this country. Do I think the Jewish community in the UK is going to evaporate? No. But I do think there is a sizable conversation now happening within the community of people saying, okay, is this the place that we've got a future?
There were nearly 2,000 anti-Semitic incidents reported in the first half of 2024, the highest number ever recorded for a 6-month period. 9 out of 10 British Jews say the government is not doing enough to stop the violence and discrimination.
I know some who have left. I know some who are actively, seriously looking at leaving.
Jewish investigative journalist David Collier tells us he constantly feels the anti-Jewish hate.
I get death threats every single day, but I'm also being contacted by Jews either who are having trouble at work, at home, students.
What brings you both out here today?
Well, just the amount of anti-Semitism we've had in Oxford for the past year has been really awful. We've had swastikas, we've had Jews being accused of weaponising anti-Semitism.
We've been told we're not welcome at the university.
Yeah, and it just...
down the streets.
It's been escalating, and this is the big message, it's about the escalation, you know, it's getting gradually worse.
This in a nation where the adopted national song is Jerusalem. In the song Jerusalem, the British sing, "We will not cease till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land." But this Judeo-Christian connection that goes back centuries has begun to fray. Surveys show British Jews consider Islamists to be the most serious threat. And in a close second is the far left. Falter adds the nation's young people are being indoctrinated against Jews.
They are becoming radicalized on the internet. They are they are imbibing bigotries that their parents themselves don't have, and then they're teaching this from one kid to another kid. We've got a generation which is extremely hateful, and not just hateful, they're extremists.
David Collier is afraid demographics have already decided the future course of Britain's Jews. The most popular name for baby boys in Britain today is Mohammed.
It's a completely different country. The entire dynamic has changed, the entire atmosphere has changed, both towards Israel and in extension towards the Jewish community. It's completely different. It's a different country with a different demographic, a different outlook. Everything about it is different. You're talking to these Jewish people, and you know that things are only going to get worse for them, not better. There's no way back for the United Kingdom from this point.
Dale joins us with more. Dale, during his speech in Munich, Germany last week, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said nothing is more urgent than mass migration. In many European countries, mass migration is at an all-time high. And Vance suggested the recent car-ramming terrorist attack in Munich was a result of unvetted migration.
How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants.
So, Dale, you reported extensively on Brexit and European voter concerns about immigration. To what extent has mass migration caused this dramatic rise in anti-Semitism in Britain?
It's the number one driver. As I say in the story, the most popular name for baby boys in Britain now is Mohammed. But it's interesting that in the view of Jews who were polled about this, right behind Muslim immigrants is the far left in Britain. They're close behind Muslims as a source of anti-Semitism. And then most disturbing is it's spreading among British young people. And I think young people in a lot of nations, they're spreading lies and conspiracy theories over things like TikTok, and it's become sort of an indoctrination academy online for anti-Semitism.
Excellent report there by our friends at CBN. It should be a wake-up call to us all to realise the challenges facing our Jewish community and how, as Christians, we need to extend that hand of friendship and love to them who feel very scared, who feel very lonely and very isolated. And it's time that we really did reach out to our precious Jewish community. Zalmi, I have a very important question, and I never thought I'd actually ask this question on the Middle East report, but I think we've got to a place now where we need to ask this question. Does British Jewry have a future in this country?
The way things are right now, no. I've mentioned the exodus has already started. And just referring to that clip, I mean, I actually don't mind that the most popular name in Britain is Mohammed, because to be honest, white Anglo-Saxon Brits are not making babies, but they are. It's, you know, of itself, that's not important. What is important is the importation of Islamist propaganda and hatred and inculcation of that hatred into British society. That's the danger. I come into contact with lots of Muslims in my profession and have done for years and years. I can't say a bad thing about any of them, not a single one of them. I guess the only bad thing I could say is that they don't speak out against the extremists in their society. And in Jewish society, we also have our extremists. You know, there's no question. Every society has their extremists, but they've got to be called out. They've got to be criticized. And unfortunately, the Muslim community in Britain is not calling them out. And then, as far as the future is concerned, yeah, people are voting with their feet in big numbers. I've never seen this in my lifetime. And I guess this hasn't happened since Britain opened its doors to Jewish refugees after the war. So, pretty sad.
Yeah, and on to discussing Israel, and I was out in Israel last month with the Christian Media Summit sponsored by the Israeli Government Press Office and the Israeli Foreign Ministry, and it was great to be back in Israel because the previous time I went was January of 2024 and February of 2024. And it was a dark time to be in Israel. It was a horrific time. Israel was still fighting that intensive war against Hamas in Gaza. You saw the faces of the hostages everywhere you went, including landing at Ben Gurion Airport. Commercial billboards had faces of hostages everywhere, and the whole nation was in a kind of sense of mourning and kind of grief. This time, having come back and knowing that the 20 remaining living Israeli hostages held by Hamas have come home, there's that resemblance of life coming back to normal in Israel. However you describe normal in Israel, because there's no such thing, but you can see that Israel's on that road to recovery. Share with us your thoughts where Israel is right now, 2 years after the war. The hostages are home, and Israelis are then beginning to rebuild their shattered lives after the horrors of October the 7th.
Where Israel is now is it's woken up to a sense of realism that didn't exist before October the 7th. Before October the 7th, everyone was talking about two-state solution. Certainly the left and secular were. And in fact, it was the secular left kibbutzim and townships in the south that took the brunt of this. And you were talking about people there who had helped Palestinians from Gaza, who had taken them to hospital when they needed medical attention, who'd given them jobs, helped them with agriculture and all this kind of stuff. And they got repaid with a pogrom that is hard to imagine, could be possibly surpassed by even the most evil beasts out of the pit of hell. It's just indescribable, so much so that the videos that Hamas took on their GoPros are still not been seen. And to be honest, I have not seen them either, because I just will not allow Hamas to live rent-free in my head with such images. Yes, there's a lot of trauma in Israel. There's a huge amount of psychotherapy that's in demand there, but it's not surprising, because at the end of the day, you're in battle with your comrades, and you see comrades injured and so forth, and you have battle weary, and you have shell shock, you have all of those things. It'll take time, but we will overcome.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at this excellent CBN News report. This one's entitled, "It's a Miracle They Survived. Lifelong Recovery Begins for the Israeli Hostages." And we do need to keep them in their prayers, because the trauma that they've been through is undescribable.
In a symbolic gesture, doctors at the Rabin Medical Center recently turned off the lights in their hostage care unit as the last living hostage released left for home.
It's a lot more complicated than the pictures, of course. The minute they come back, the first thing we do is we actually see that there is nothing, that there's no emergency, medical emergency or mental emergency.
During the last 2 years, doctors here treated 40 returning hostages, including 5 of the last 20 Hamas released in October.
We hear terrible stories. We hear stories that you can't sleep at night after hearing, and some of them were kept in such small spaces they couldn't even stretch their hands. The food that they were eating or not eating, the variety, everything affects their physical and mental state.
Professor Noah Eliakim Raz, who oversaw the unit here, says the medical staff had to learn and develop protocols as they went along.
It's new medicine, of course. There is not a hostages medicine. It's not a field that you learn in medical school.
Raz told CBN News while doctors thoroughly checked their newly freed patients, just dealing with injuries from October 7th can revive the trauma. And leaving the hospital is not the end of the journey.
Some of the returnees that returned more than 6 months ago are still going through medical procedures, surgeries. It can teach us about the situation. The fact that people are standing and smiling when they come back home is only a small part of the puzzle.
Alon Ohel spent 2 years in captivity. Wounded on October 7th, he did not receive treatment and suffered harsh conditions in tunnels, including starvation. Alon recently returned to the hospital for orthopedic and exceptional eye surgeries.
The moment we realized that it might be possible to restore Alon's sight, this was an emotional moment and a very remarkable one.
The surgeries were a success. New York physician Dr. Mark Siegel, an internal medicine specialist, told CBN News it's a wonder the hostages survived. He says mental recovery takes longer than the physical.
Dehumanization, depersonalization, nightmares, severe anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder. They're being handled right now with kindness, with compassion. Their families are playing a huge role at nursing them back to health. The sensitivity that it takes to deal with someone in this condition is extremely important.
Professor Raz helped treat the mothers and a grandmother who came out as part of the first hostage release in November 2023.
The resilience and strength that these mothers showed is impossible to capture.
She praises the creativity used by the hostages to train their brains to learn things while in captivity.
You hear incredible stories about how they train themselves to keep track of time. They know to tell you exactly dates and hours of things they did in captivity. And it's unbelievable. Everyone held on to something that gave him hope.
She adds that the suffering the hostages endured can affect their health and lives for decades.
And you can see that not only psychological influence, but also physical influences, more heart disease, more dental problems, and even premature aging, even 4 decades forward. So the body remembers.
They will need to receive further care for years with the goal of building resilience.
The main thing is to bring them back to life. And the goals are very different and then change from one to the other. For one person, going back to life is running a family, and for the other, it's playing the piano, and for the third one is going back to the army.
Families play an essential role in the rehabilitation process. Raz likens it almost to giving birth.
They get this person back. They don't really know what to expect. It's learning each other again. They are different, and the returnees are different. The families change too.
She says the staff felt privileged to work with the hostages. Her hope is that Israelis as a whole will learn from this crisis the importance of being a community and working together.
Just because the hostage is home doesn't mean that their trauma has ended. So we really do need to keep them in our prayers on a daily basis, that they would have that full recovery from the horrors. The impression I got when I was in Israel was quite extraordinary. I mean, the Israeli people themselves are inspirational, they are courageous, and they have a resistance which is sensational. I mean, they are so resilient after everything they faced over the last 2 years, and yet the Israelis kind of move on, emotionally park it, and just get on with life, which is absolutely incredible. But can you kind of share a little bit from what your father went through as a Holocaust survivor, and what advice would he give to these hostages who've returned home to their loved ones because our prayers have been answered, of how they restore their lives after such terror and trauma being held by Hamas in that hellhole that is Gaza, and many of them in those awful terror tunnels, not seeing anyone or seeing any light for 2 years?
Well, certainly my father, when he came to Britain from out of the concentration camps, and with thanks to the generous British government of the day that gave sanctuary, he couldn't speak English. He had to self-learn English, and then he was motivated to do that because he wanted to tell his story. And the answer to your question is that the best thing that any one of these survivors could do, apart from rehabilitating with their family and with their psychotherapists and so forth, is to sit down and write their story so that future generations will know, so that the world, when it wakes up from this stupor of social media misinformation and lies, that someone is going to read that and hear what's going on. At this Manfred Goldberg eulogy, it was mentioned that he had gone and given the answer to 1,000 questions with the Holocaust Foundation, which had been recorded so that after he dies, now that he's gone, children will be able to speak to him as an AI creation and ask any question they like about the Holocaust and his experiences, and that will live on forever. That's what it's about. It's telling the story so that it doesn't get buried.
Wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And I've got to say that when I recorded the interview I did a couple of years ago with Manfred, I was expecting just to record 1 hour. But his memory and his insights into what he went through, we had to stop the recording after an hour because I realised that he's got so much to share that we need an extra program. So we went from originally wanting to record a 1 hour program to him to a 2 hour program with him because his knowledge and his insight and his story was just sensational. But him and his wife, his wife is delightful. He was charming, so intelligent, so alert and so warm. And the one thing I get from Holocaust survivors more than anything else is this incredible love for life. And what I find remarkable about them is there's no resentment, there's no hatred, there's just pure forgiveness for what the Nazis have done. And when we have problems in our own life and people upset us, this is nothing compared to what they've gone through. And it's just been the privilege of my life to have interviewed people like Manfred and to tell their story, as well as you and telling your father's story as well. But on another level, when I was out in Israel staying with my Israeli friends in Herzliya, they were telling me how 80 IDF soldiers who have fought in Gaza against Hamas have committed suicide, and that many soldiers now are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. How important is it that we support the brave and courageous soldiers of the Israeli Defense Force that have gone above and beyond their duty in order to protect the one and only Jewish state?
Well, there are many, many organizations which have sprung up. You have to understand that Israel is a country that has more charitable, we call it in Hebrew, chesed, organizations per capita than anywhere in the world, probably by a factor of 10. And whether it's in the religious community or the Russian community or whatever, there are a huge number of organizations like that. Organizations that put chickens on the table of every Friday night dinner for people who need it, and also for the post-traumatic stress and the psychotherapy that's needed and the support that's needed for it. I mean, you only have to follow some of the podcasts which are interspersed with advertisements seeking donations to these organizations.
Excellent, that's so important. And Zalmi, just reflect on us as we go into, we're only a month away from 2026, a new year, but we also know that this is a significant year in Israel because the Israelis were having a general election, and you're here representing Likud from the UK. What are the prospects of the current Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Likud forming the next government?
I think that the chances are very strong. There's huge forces being waged against Netanyahu, as you know, and Hamas has completely exploited this. As you know, there were these, every Saturday night, there were demonstrations in Hostage Square demanding that Netanyahu gets the hostages, as if that wasn't his main priority. But Hamas used that because they would, before each of the demonstrations, would fire up the opposition by sending out a message from one of the hostages in an awful state, begging for Netanyahu to get them released. So it's very sad that Hamas was able to manipulate a sector of the Israeli public, but it's a vociferous minority. The vast majority of Israelis are much more now to the right. They are very, very skeptical about any deals on two-state solution, the idea of living side by side with Palestinians who are bred on hatred. So, you know, that really is where we are at the moment. And I think Netanyahu he's proved himself to be a Churchill in Israel. There's nobody that comes anywhere close, whether it's in polling or just in simple statesmanship stature, to Netanyahu. I can't imagine anyone other than Netanyahu taking us through this war. And people ask me, what do you think Netanyahu's greatest achievement is? And I'm still not saying it's since October the 7th. I've always said it's steering Israel through 8 years of Obama, the most toxic presidency, and not giving up a single piece of land during that 8 years. So that's the medal I give him.
I give him another medal. And this is something that I don't hear anything coming out of Israel, and it needs to, working in media, working in public relations. Israel's trump card is the fact that Israel has saved the world from a nuclear holocaust. They took those steps when other nations like our nation, European nations, the United Nations opposed those military airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities to prevent Iran from becoming achieving nuclear breakout and having the world's most dangerous regime, having the world's most dangerous weapon to blackmail the entire world in support the increase of international terrorism around the world without a fear of retaliation. And yet Israel doesn't talk about what they've done and what they've achieved, and that is to saving the world from a nuclear holocaust. Share with us your thoughts on that.
You can't get your voice heard over the cacophony of Qatari-funded social media, Al Jazeera lies. You just can't. You can plough £100 million into what they call in Israel Hasbara, public relations. It's just not going to happen. That's the way it is. We have to accept that.
Yeah, but I give him a medal for that because he saved the world. Okay, on to another very important topic, and this relates to Qatar. This relates to Al Jazeera. And this is the historic announcement made by President Trump, and he's made quite a few of them during his presidency, which isn't even a year old yet. He's decided to seek to outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood and describe them as an international terror organization. Share with us your thoughts on this bold move to outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, as far as I understand it, he's given them 90 days. He's asked for 90 days research into the Muslim Brotherhood before he actually makes that happen. So that remains to still happen. I think Marco Rubio is in charge of making that prescription or banning or whatever you want to call it. But the fact of the matter is, it should have happened years ago. It should have happened in Britain. I mean, the places where the Muslim Brotherhood are banned are Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Russia, and Bahrain, Egypt. If they are banning, and the UAE, if they are banning the Muslim Brotherhood and it's an Arab organization, they're banning it. So why on earth is the whole of Europe still not banning it? It's just ridiculous.
Absolutely, and of course we have to acknowledge that the Muslim Brotherhood is the grandfather of international terrorism, and out of the Muslim Brotherhood we have the likes of Al-Qaeda, we have ISIS, we have Hamas, and Hamas is an affiliate of the Muslim Brotherhood because this is the Palestinian branch, and of course the epicenter of all this is Qatar, but also President Erdogan of Turkey as well. They are the forces that are pushing this, and of course the new president of Syria, al-Shams, is also a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. But again, why the West struggles to deal with the Muslim Brotherhood, isn't it because they don't wear like camouflage flags, they don't look like terrorists, but these men are terrorists wearing suits?
You couldn't put a finger on the Muslim Brotherhood. They work in the shadows through their bankers in Qatar. Qatar bankrolls everything that the Muslim Brotherhood needs. And as far as giving safe haven and political encouragement, that's Turkey. Turkey, I mean, the leader of Turkey, Erdogan, he wants to be the caliph. He wants to be the new Ottoman Empire caliph. He has very grand ideas. Both are obviously virulently opposed to Israel, want to see Israel's destruction. And then, of course, you have on the other side, the Shia side, because Muslim Brotherhood is Sunni. The Shia side is Iran. And again, it's a death cult. Tehran is about to run out of drinking water in about 2 weeks. They don't have any more drinking water. They've had severe drought, no drinking water. That's a fact. And they are still, instead of building drinking water plants or desalination plants or whatever they need to do to save their people from dying of thirst, they're still sending arms to Hezbollah. This is, it reminds me, if you connect it to the Holocaust, one of the facts was that Hitler's trains to the Eastern Front ran out of gas, ran out of petrol or coal, whatever fuels those trains, long before long after the Auschwitz trains had priority for the fuel in preference to the army going to the Russian front. That's what is in the mind of a Nazi. It's this impelling desire to wipe out Jews, to kill Jews. That's what's at the basis of it.
And now we have those Islamo-fascists with a combination of Islamic extremism combined with that Nazi ideology. And these are today's terrorists or today's Nazis. So let's have a look at this excellent CBN news report. And this is the announcement that President Trump is looking to outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood, the godfather of international Islamic terrorism.
The Muslim Brotherhood was founded in Egypt in 1928. Today, it has chapters throughout the Middle East and the world. President Trump's order read in part, its chapters in Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt engage in or facilitate and support violence and destabilization campaigns that harm their own regions, United States citizens, and United States interests. Last week, Texas Governor Greg Abbott designated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, stating its actions to support terrorism and to subvert U.S. and Texas laws are unacceptable. The order comes days after a 200-page report cited how the Muslim Brotherhood uses our own democratic institutions to undermine our way of life as part of their plan to establish a global caliphate and Sharia law. In northern Israel, the country is on high alert after the IDF eliminated Hezbollah's military chief. Reportedly, Hezbollah is warning the next conflict is just a matter of time. Israel's foreign minister says Hezbollah must be disarmed.
As long as Hezbollah is the strongest military force in Lebanon, Israel has no security and Lebanon has no future.
And in Gaza, after distributing nearly 190 million meals, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, announced it's ceasing operations. CBN News visited one of the distribution sites where it provided food directly to the people of Gaza, bypassing Hamas, and helped lay the groundwork for the ceasefire. GHF says the new U.S.-backed Civil Military Coordination Center for Gaza Stabilization will be adopting its successful model.
Well done, President Trump, for your bravery and your courage to outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood, and we pray that America does, but we need the UK to follow suit. I can't see that happening under this current Labour government, but maybe with a reform government we could. I just want to read something. I got the actual executive order from President Trump's own website, the White House, and he said the following. He said, countering the terrorist threats, President Trump is confronting the Muslim Brotherhood's transnational network, which fuels terrorism and destabilize campaigns against the US interests and allies in the Middle East. In the aftermath of October the 7th, 2023 attack, the military wing of the Lebanese chapter of the Muslim Brotherhood helped terror groups launch multiple rocket attacks against both civilian and military targets within Israel. A senior Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood leader encouraged violent attacks against US partners and in the Middle East on the same day that Hamas perpetrated the October the 7th attack. Reports indicate that the Jordanian Muslim Brotherhood leaders have long provided material support to the militant wing of Hamas. And I think we have to make a very strong statement here that Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. So for our viewers watching to really understand who the Muslim Brotherhood, they are Hamas, but they're Hamas in suits. And they have become so infectious and crept in every aspect of British government. We're advising them on counter-terrorism strategies, their foreign policy, but these people need to be outlawed, don't they?
Yes, and let's not forget the Muslim Brotherhood assassinated President Sadat, who boldly went to Jerusalem. I think the anniversary was just last week or something. You know, they just wiped out, you know, they want nothing about peace. They only want war in that region. And, you know, Qatar is their banker. Qatar writes out Muslim Brotherhood checks. And Qatar's put something like $6 or $7 billion in the last 20 years into American universities and colleges. You know, Qatar is the biggest funder of American education, of higher education in the country. Where's that going to take Generation Z? Where's that going to put the next crop of presidents and senators in the United States? It's a very daunting thought.
Absolutely. I just want to read out something from what do you make of this article in the Times of Israel, which says the following. Notably, the executive order makes no mention of Qatar and Turkey, which both had ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, but have also become close allies of the administration. Both countries have hosted exiled Muslim Brotherhood leaders, albeit with the knowledge and sometimes the urging of the United States. A wide range of Muslim Brotherhood linked organizations and charities operate in Turkey, and President Erdogan, the AKP party, shares ideological affinities with the Muslim Brotherhood, even though the latter remains formally separate. Qatar also has been historically seen as a major backer of the Muslim Brotherhood ideology via its diplomatic efforts and the media outlets that the government funds. However, there is no formal Muslim Brotherhood chapter in Qatar, and the organisation's members face limitations in recent years inside the country. So surely for President Trump to actually really tackle the Muslim Brotherhood, he's got to tackle Turkey, who's a member of NATO, and also the Qataris, because the Qataris are trying to reshape the future of Gaza, doing everything they can to protect Hamas, even with the suggestion they actually want Turkish troops to be peacekeepers in Gaza for the reconstruction of Gaza, and we know all they will do is protecting Hamas. Share with us how this US administration really needs to confront Qatar.
Yeah, unfortunately, America is, or certainly Trump administration is highly conflicted where Qatar is concerned. Its biggest base in the Middle East is in Qatar. God knows why. My preference would have been for it to lift its base and move it all the way up to Gaza. Gaza's been flattened anyway. America may as well create their big base there and then give thousands of Palestinian jobs. Families can survive for 50 years on American wages for building up a base. So that would have been my ideal solution there. But the fact of the matter is Qatar is doing with its checkbook what Iran was doing with its nuclear missiles and so forth. That's the story really from both sides. But like I said, I've said to you many times before, there's never a month since the creation of Israel that there hasn't been a crisis on our doorstep. And we will persevere and we will survive. Just as you said, the Israelis are so resilient in coming back after 2 years in a 7-front war. They've come back, they turn a new page, let's get up and start all over. And look, the stock market is booming. The Israeli shekel is giddy heights compared certainly to the sinking dollar. It doesn't matter what they throw at us, we survive.
Absolutely, Jewish people live. So let's see Eric Steckelbeck being interviewed by Raj on CBN. And Eric Steckelbeck is not only an outstanding journalist, he's a friend of mine, and he also wrote the book, The Muslim Brotherhood. And this is his perspective on President Trump's decision to look into reviewing, outlawing the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States and prescribing them as an international terror organization.
In an extraordinarily significant move, President Trump is vowing to label the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. Well, TBN's Eric Stackelbeck is here to unpack this massive news. So, Eric, why is this so significant?
Well, Raj, the Muslim Brotherhood is the granddaddy of them all when it comes to Islamic terror groups. When you think of Al-Qaeda, for instance, Ayman al-Zawahiri, Osama bin Laden, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, all these Al-Qaeda kingpins, before they formed Al-Qaeda, before they planned 9/11, they belonged to the Muslim Brotherhood. So did the not so dearly departed leader of ISIS, Omar Abu al-Baghdadi, was a Brotherhood member before ISIS. The Brotherhood has been the gateway to jihad for decades. And Raj, to give you another idea of how violent this organization is, Hamas self-identifies itself as the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. And it's an organization, a movement that's dedicated to global domination. That includes right here in the United States. We've seen the Brotherhood make great progress in Europe, and they want to bring that model to America. It's no coincidence that we've seen a real increase in mosque building in the United States since 9/11, including where I'm sitting right now, Texas, where, Raj, in the past 2 years alone, 48 new mosques have opened. Again, this is not a coincidence. We see the Brotherhood's strategy and blueprint really stretching worldwide, including right here in America.
So why did this take so long, right? There's even, a bunch of Arab nations that have outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood. Why is this just now happening with the United States?
Great question. And President Trump was going to do this, I believe, Raj, if he continued in office beyond January 2021. This was in the works, a federal ban of the Muslim Brotherhood. As you mentioned, look, Jordan, Syria, the UAE, they've all banned the Brotherhood, as has Russia and several other nations. But in America, it was going to happen. Remember, Trump was on the road to doing it. Now he's done it, of course. But under the Obama administration, the Brotherhood in America was never stronger. We're talking about those front groups, the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, the Muslim American Society, MAS. There's a bunch of them, Raj, and they were guests at the White House under President Obama. President Trump flipped the script. Now he's back in office, and in less than a year, he announced yesterday he is going to designate the Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. And I think what really moved the needle here, Raj, in the past few days, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, announced that the state of Texas was banning the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, that Brotherhood front group that I mentioned. So I think Greg Abbott, it's been in the works for a while, and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, mentioned they were considering it back in August, but Greg Abbott making this move, I think, put it into overdrive. And now President Trump apparently is going to sign this into law.
So you mentioned a lot of what the Muslim Brotherhood manifests in the Middle East, but maybe here at home, how is this more than just an Islamic nonprofit, right? What is the actual goals? What are they actually doing here in the United States?
I would describe the Brotherhood as terrorists in suits. And Raj, I've interviewed Muslim Brotherhood leaders. I wrote a book about the Brotherhood called The Brotherhood way back in 2013, warning about this and their strategy. These are guys, and from spending time with them face to face in the same room, interviewing them, they wear suits. They are Western educated, well-spoken, very eloquent. They come off as very moderate if you don't know the true agenda. And that's the goal here. I've compared them to kind of termites burrowing in to a host society. And Raj, what they do is they'll get jobs or they'll gain influence in academia, in the media, in the educational system, at the governmental level even. I mentioned a minute ago how these Brotherhood front groups were guests at the White House during the Obama years. So they kind of ingratiate themselves into a host society. And a big part of that is to build and establish what I'd call self-segregating Islamic communities. Think of Europe right now. Think of London and some of the places in London where it doesn't look, and Dearborn, Michigan. Exactly, Raj. Great point. Dearborn, Minneapolis, we see it. Here in Texas, where I'm sitting right now, again, 48 mosques in the past 24 months alone have opened up. Something's going on here. And then you have Zohran Mamdani as mayor of New York City. This is the strategy, slow and steady. And with these enclaves like a Dearborn, the goal is for them to be kind of self-segregating. And they've perfected this in Europe in places like London, Paris, and Berlin. And the goal is to bring it here. It's a state within a state almost. That's the ultimate goal for the Muslim Brotherhood. And again, they chip away. And a key point here, I mentioned earlier how Al-Qaeda, ISIS, they come out of the Brotherhood. At the end of the day, Raj, they all have the same end game. Look, the Brotherhood, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, different tactics. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, they want to kill you now, blow you up now. The Brotherhood's playing the long game. Patient. We'll do this through legal means. We'll do this through the political process, but it all ends up in the same place, the return of that Islamic caliphate and Sharia law for one and all, whether we like it or not.
Great journalists there, both Raj and also Eric Steckelbeck, who have so much moral clarity. And we thank you, CBN, for sharing the truth about the Muslim Brotherhood. So the big question is, I think this one, I cannot see in any way that this current Labour government that is just bowing down to the Islamists. And we know that this Labour government's number one enemy is the State of Israel. Which is horrific because Israel is our greatest ally in the Middle East. But I cannot see them following in the footsteps of President Trump in looking to ban the Muslim Brotherhood operating in the UK. But it may take Nigel Farage and a reform government to do so. So do you think that reform, if they form the next government, which looks very likely now, could actually then confront and prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood as an international terror organization?
Yeah, but I think by that time the horse will have bolted, because the next election is going to be, can't be sooner than three years' time, and I just don't see it happening. I think the damage to Britain over a period of 3 years under the current track of this government, both economically, in terms of policing, in terms of stifling free speech, jailing people for tweets about true things, I just don't see that it can recover, certainly from the Jewish standpoint, in 3 years. And we all know where this leads to. You know, every country that has expelled its Jews has wound up impoverished. You only have to, the best example is Spain. Spain expelled all of its Jews, and its downward spiral from literally the center of the universe, right? It was the Spanish Armada, it was the biggest trading nation, and it went literally downhill. And what is Spain now? It's known for holidays and bullfights and sherry. That's it. All gone. And Columbus went to America. Jews settled in America, created an absolute miracle out of New York, and that also is going to go down the drain because of Zahran Mamdani, who was funded by CARE, the Council for American Islamic Relations, just as Eric Steckelbeck was referring to. So it's sad, but unfortunately we've seen this story play out before.
No, absolutely. We've got 5 minutes left of the programme, Zalmi. So do you think that Aliyah now is playing a more prominent role in your thoughts, your family's thoughts, the Jewish community, plus Jewish communities across Europe and also the United States? And let's also remember that the United States is only in the last decade that has been affected with Jew hatred. Now it seems like it's completely out of control over the Western world. So will we see over the next coming years a huge increase in the number of Jewish people making Aliyah to Israel in fulfillment of biblical prophecy because of the pandemic that is Jew hatred?
Certainly all Zionists will be going from London to Britain to Israel, except those perhaps who have American citizenship. They may decide to go to Florida or Texas or somewhere like that. I hosted the Minister of Absorption and Aliyah at my home a couple of months ago, and he and his aides were telling me it's unprecedented, the amount of applications for Aliyah. So this is, it's not the pull of the land of Israel, it's the push of what's happening in Britain that is creating this phenomenon.
What role can our Christian viewers play to stand with your community, Zalmi, and also support the Jewish community at this time?
Well, I think certainly Revelation and all of its affiliates, CBN and so forth, are doing an amazing job in putting out the real truth, putting out the good word. And I think there needs to be much, much more of that going on the social media platform. Bottom line is that the Christian population far outweighs the Muslim population, and I think every individual Christian who doesn't like what they see, unless they're in Britain where tweeting is banned and as a jail term, certainly in America and other parts of the world, most other parts of the world, they have free speech and they should be outspoken.
Absolutely. And we know that Hanukkah is fast approaching, the next Jewish holiday. Share with us what Hanukkah means to you, as it's a festival of lights and the festival of dedication, where we remember the incredible victory of the Maccabees over the Greeks, and those candles burning for, is it 8 days in the temple?
Yes. Well, I can only say that Hanukkah, to me personally, is my father's story in his book, The Yellow Star, where he lit a Hanukkah candle in a shoe polish tin under his bunk in the Auschwitz barrack, from sewing machine oil and a piece of wick and a tin, of shoe polish tin. And he told the story of how they gathered round, and then the commandant came in and smelled the oil and says, was geht vor here? What is happening here? They literally risked their lives, because life in Auschwitz was, you know, you get shot, that's it. And they risked their lives just to celebrate the miracle of Hanukkah. There can be no further dedication to Jewish survival than that.
Incredible. Zalmi, it's always an honour. It's always a pleasure to have you on the Middle East Report. And thank you for your friendship. And, you know, we are standing with you. We're standing with your family. We're standing with the Jewish community. And you're not alone in this struggle. And you're not alone with this pandemic of Jew hatred that is engulfing our nation and our society. I just want to reassure you of that and our friendship, that we are with you 100%. So have a wonderful Hanukkah later on in December, and thank you so much for being my guest and your contribution to this program in 2025.
Thanks, Simon.
And I just want to thank you for watching this program at home. Sadly, what we're seeing is this pandemic of Jew hatred engulfing our precious Jewish community. And as Christians, we can't remain to be silent or indifferent to the suffering of our Jewish brothers and sisters. This is why we need to bring comfort to them. As Isaiah 40 says, comfort, comfort ye my people, Jerusalem. So it's our duty to comfort and show love and support to our Jewish community at this time. But also we need our nation to follow in the footsteps of President Trump to outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood and prescribe them as an international terror organization. So thank you so much for watching today's Middle East Report.